we started, I don't know, we started talking like an hour and a half ago, and like maybe 25 to a half an hour before we started talking was when, or not, sorry, that's wrong. Like an hour to 2 hours before we started talking, they dropped the Adam Gaudette false positive or possible positive COVID test, which erupted a firestorm on Canucks Twitter on the what, the how, the where, the why, the when, and the what are they going to do when it comes to their COVID situation and their schedule, because they are supposed to play Wednesday night, which will be later today if you're listening to this episode tomorrow. But as far as we know, they're going to be sitting on their current test results. And if any of them come back positive or false positive, we might be looking at another week, maybe more, of delayed hockey because, I mean, barring maybe some bias from certain league executives, but I can't imagine the league would approve two players testing positive or one player testing positive from the Canucks and telling them and the Calgary Flames to go ahead with their game, especially when both teams aren't playing a series against each other. They are both then venturing off to go face other teams. So depending on how the league looks at it, they might see this as the breeding ground for like a COVID outbreak spread if they let the Canucks play with one of their players with like having recently tested positive with COVID. But if it's false positive, I don't know, maybe they take the chances. The league's kind of weird. Like the Habs had two players test positive outright, and they completely rejigged the entire schedule for 5 of the 7 teams.
The Canucks at one point were the only team, I think, in the entire NHL up until, or well, currently technically still are, I believe, the only team that has not had a schedule change. And I mean, you ask about the whole, will they shut down? I mean, I definitely think they're going to be on high alert, especially because, I mean, the way the math adds up, it is technically possible that it could be related to the Canadians, because keep in mind the Canucks did play the Habs over the 2 weekends ago. COVID can stay dormant in your system. One of the things we already know is that it can stay dormant in your system for up to 2 weeks before showing any sort of symptoms. That would line up right around here. It's a Tuesday, like it's a little bit over, but Gaudette testing positive at this point, and the biggest worry here, of course, is that if that was related, as we saw with the Habs, one of the players who tested positive, we don't know which one, it was a variant of COVID. It was not the original. Yeah. It's not the main strain. It was a variant, which was very, very scary because, again, we're already dealing with the first variant with the original version of COVID. Now you start throwing variants in that vaccines aren't able to prevent or protect against, and it just becomes a huge mess. So the NHL was very quick to shut it all down as soon as they realized what was going on, which was, at the time, good on them for doing that. Yeah. And they've done a very good job. I mean, the Habs are playing right now for the first time since that. Yeah, since the shutdown. And I mean, the Canucks don't play till tomorrow night or today when you're listening to this. And if it's related, we're going to probably see them shut things down and immediately do this all over again in Vancouver. Hopefully it's a false positive. But even then, I wonder if maybe, because I think there's enough time in between this game and the next. I think the next game would be on Saturday between the Canucks and the Flames. I think it's 2. I think they've got 2 in a row here before the Canucks head out on the road, unless I am very much mistaken. There is enough time that, say, they could just postpone this game regardless, wait to see what happens. Like just reschedule the Wednesday game and then just hope. Just and push it to like another round of testing. Yeah, push it to like Friday, to like Thursday or to Friday or something, just to give them the time to make sure everything's good. Yeah, it just depends on when Calgary's next game is after Wednesday. Yeah, but if that is if it's not a false positive, regardless of whether it's a variant or the regular original coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not good because Gaudette was pulled off the ice at practice today. And that means he was, in theory, exposed to everyone else in the rink was exposed to him. Which
coaching staff, rink staff, fellow
everybody.
players. He spent the weekend on a doggy date with Brock Besser and his puppies. Like,
which is
there's a lot to kind of get into with this, and this is something that we've thrown our hands in the air over multiple times this year on our show, in that teams are both playing games and apparently practicing without confirmed negative test results, which for a league that with this much riding on it, it is unbelievable that we are 20 something games away from the supposed conclusion of this season, and they're apparently still doing shit that is just like recklessly endangering the safety of all of these players.
Now, like, they are doing daily testing, though. They're doing daily testing. I don't know if it's super. I don't know if we'd say reckless because they did test.
It's still
yesterday.
Reckless because what's the point of doing daily tests if you're just gonna start practicing without the results? What's the point? You might as well practice and play without doing testing at all because you clearly don't care about the results. That's what this says to me.
I guess the hard part of that is, I mean, I don't know, like, say, I don't know where the tests are being looked at, essentially, like the result, like the data and results are actually being looked at. I don't know if that's I've never had to take one of the tests. Somebody can tell me if you've taken the test before. You can probably tell me.
I think we talked about this maybe even like one of our first or second episodes or something like that. It was about the fact that when the team does their tests, the results don't go to the players, but they go to the team's medical staff who act in accordance with like the local health authorities. It isn't like when you personally take a COVID test and you get your result and then you act individually. The team gets the results and it's their discretion to notify the player of said result and then act accordingly and react to it. But as I said, it doesn't really make a difference if you do all these tests, but you still practice without knowing the results, because Gaudette showed up to the rink. He still practiced. He changed with the guys. He, spent, I don't know, an hour and a half on the ice with them practicing. And then midway through, they pull him out and say, "Oh, you have a false positive, or you're positive, or you've either registered a false positive. You need to go take another test, and then everyone else here is going to have to do one as well." They still they still continue the practice with everyone else,
right?
Which, I mean, we can get into that, but so now all of the Canucks need to self-isolate away from their spouses, their families, take a second like their usual daily test, but probably a bit earlier. And they need to, as a team, wait for the results to see if it was a false positive, if it was an actual positive, and see who else has been infected if it is in fact a positive test. Right. But at the same, like the whole thing is, when that AHL game got started and then canceled after one period, it was a case of, why didn't you just wait a half an hour for the results to come in?
I fully agree on that. I just wasn't sure. I'm fortunate enough that I have not had to take a COVID test. Like, I haven't even had to take the personal one. So I don't even know, like, how quick, when they say rapid testing, like, how quick are we talking?
They're very quick nowadays, like, without outing who, due to, patient confidentiality or whatever. Back in December, I think, or maybe last summer, when you took a test, it would take 48 hours plus to get a result. In December, you could get test results within 24 hours. And even till now, you can still get test results within 24 hours. So,
So it takes a while. So it still takes a while.
But if you're doing it, like, say every morning you go to Rogers Arena, you get tested at 8 a.m. and they collect them all and send them off, you would have your results in theory before your practice the next day at 9:30 or 10 a.m., right? But at the same time, if you're still waiting on one player's test result, why are you practicing? They're all in a group chat. You just got to say, hey guys, practice is delayed half an hour. We're waiting on one test. But they couldn't do it. They're impatient, or they're stuck in their schedule, and they're just like, okay, we need to just get practice out of the way. We'll deal with the results, or the results don't matter right now for us. Either way,
or at the very least, have that player wait and that one
exactly.
player to wait.
Stay home until we know your result. You like, we know the league is all about being on time, showing up for practices on time, showing up 10 minutes early is on time, showing up on time is late. But I'm sure they would make an exception. The coach would have to make an exception and be like, hey, your test result isn't in yet. It's okay for you to be late because we're going to tell you if you're infected or not. It's wildly irresponsible in my books that they're still, across multiple leagues, the NHL, the AHL, they're still doing this where they just say, nah, get the guys on the ice. We're sure we'll be fine even if someone does test positive, but we just need to get the practice time in.
Yeah.
It's so reckless. Like, reading that just bothers the shit out of me. Yeah. Especially knowing that Adam Gaudette and Besser both had their Instagram stories saying they were hanging out on the weekend. They were fully within their right to do so. Like, they were distanced. You don't need to have masks on when you're hanging out with people, so long as you're adequately distanced or whatever. If they're taking separate cars or whatever, like, you're well within your right to do that.
People were asking about that on Twitter today, and I think it was Vanessa Zhang who brought up a really good point where it was nobody puts 3 people and 3 dogs in the same, or 4 dogs actually, 4 dogs. 4. I forgot that both Besser has 2 dogs and the Gaudettes have 2 dogs, so they're not going in the same car. So it's very likely that they drove separately to go to the same place, which is
regardless
correct.
But also at the same time, technically they would be considered part of each other's work bubble, right? Because you're allowed to hang out with people inside of your bubble, right? So if your dad or whatever is part of your bubble because you see him every week and you don't see anyone else, then technically that's part of your bubble. If you spend time with some guy that you work next to or beside every single day, he's a part of your bubble, and that's okay. So technically they weren't breaking any rules.
No.
But the fact is, if not the player, like, I'm not going to blame Adam Gaudette for this at all, but
no,
this is definitely on the medical staff, which, I mean, we can get into with what we'll have to do an episode maybe in the future about, like, all the failings of this Canucks team's medical, like, staff, because there are a lot of dicey things that have happened in the last 10 years, maybe, that indicate that they aren't doing a good job at taking care of their players. And I'm sure they see it too. I'm sure they saw that the people on their team are hanging out inside their own bubbles together because they can't do anything else. So you owe it to them to prevent them from coming to a hockey rink to practice if you don't have their test results in. It's a gross dereliction of duty to the players, and I wag my finger at them. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see me giving them giving them the finger. No, I am giving them a fingering like no tomorrow.
Oh God. I will say this, like, again, we don't have any proof as to, like, say we don't have any, like, obvious, like, technical proof on, like, where, like, the failing lies here. Obviously we're not as in tune with like some other reporters and everything. But I will say this, a few years ago, I wrote back when I was doing the old Sunday Crease column every single Sunday back in, like, I think this was like 2017, 2018. This was the Besser's rookie year, which eventually evolved into this podcast. I remember that season, he was having the wrist issue. And we're going to be talking about wrists later in the show, wrist injuries later, because because we have to talk about Pettersson today as well.
Yes.
Besser was having the wrist injury that just wouldn't go away. He kept coming back for a game or two, having it not feel well, and then leaving in a couple games, and then or like getting it checked on the bench, being out for another couple games, coming back and playing again. And I remember looking at that and thinking that's really fishy that he keeps getting that. Why would they keep letting him play if it's clearly not healing? Then he had there was that like freak incident with Cal Clutterbuck where he hurt his back and that put him out of commission. So we never really got a conclusion. But at the time, I actually did a little bit of research back when I think it's the site Man Games Lost or something. It's like the injury website, the Injury Viz website.
Yeah.
I remember looking at the time just to see what the Canucks had been doing, how the Canucks like Man Games Lost had been doing when you factored out like some of the players like Ryan Kessler and Patrick Eaves at the time for the Ducks who were chronically injured, weren't going to play again, sort of thing. The Canucks were at the top of the list, and they had been for Besser's first year, and I think 2 years prior to that, which would have been.
They were always at the top of the list, and that's why everyone made fun of the regime for being for blaming injuries, and they couldn't see it coming. Because historically, they were always fucked by injuries.
And here's the thing: the first year of the Lyndon Benning era, they actually were healthy most of the year. They were actually much more like closer to the back of the pack.
Yeah.
And that summer, the Canucks let go of their entire medical staff. The medical staff that was there the first season and rehired a bunch of new ones.
For some
after
reason.
that, every year the very next season with this new medical staff, suddenly the Canucks were one of the most injured teams in the league. And so many and I remember a bunch of times in that first little era of Lyndon and Benning, that lots of players were coming back very quickly from injuries and then leaving. Yeah. And I believe that's still the same medical staff.
Hasn't changed.
I don't think it's changed in that time.
Yeah. It's been the same group since.
I don't have any proof that there's anything again, I don't have proof here. I'm not claiming I have some insider info.
No, but I do remember
I'm just saying,
the time, or maybe a couple years ago, I feel like someone did have a piece out there questioning the medical staff that had come in because of just how bad the injuries had gotten on the team.
That might have been mine. You might have seen mine.
I might have saw yours. Yeah. But
that'd be funny.
And it's very interesting, timing, obviously. And man, it's a little dicey when you get into the situation where it's this isn't a case of, someone, it's not like Pettersson and a questionable fractured wrist that keeps on getting worse and worse and delayed. This is a pandemic disease that is transferable among all ages and through tight spaces and cold environments, which is hockey practice to a T. And if the Canucks medical staff deemed that waiting to reveal the results or waiting to get results was better than, allegedly playing without actually having gotten the results. I hope it's more than allegedly, because the other option is they knew he was tested positive and they kept him in practice until the NHL said you have to pull him out, which makes them look even worse.
I feel like there's maybe one, there's maybe more, I think there's got to be at least one more gray area in there where it's I don't know if okay. I'm really not trying to clear. It's not that I'm trying to clear anybody of like guilt or anything. I just feel bad for everybody in this situation, and it's scary as is. And I'm just trying to like, I don't want to go
trying
hard
to
on
remain
people.
as optimistic as possible that people aren't this fucking dumb. That's the thing.
You're
trying to be hopeful that these guys would have the players' best interest and people's health and safety in the best interest.
And I don't want to kick people when they're down, right? Like which is what's kind of happening
Elliot Friedman.
Hey, okay. Well, you know what? He's a good podcaster, so whatever. Thank you. No. What I was gonna say is basically, if you have all of the let's say you have 18. I get like if you have 18 or so tests and they all came back negative, and there's one missing. I guess, you should be worried, but at the same time, it's kind of like, I do understand I understand the mindset of all of these came back fine. I think you're like the odds are in our favor, but at the same time, if it's one test that's taking longer than everybody else's, then it's a bit of an issue. And I get when because what is this? This is day, like, I don't even know what day we're on in the season at this point. Like, if you were counting, not by games, but like by just days on the 90. Calendar, over 100, right? When you've done it over 100 times and every single time it's coming back negative.
I think it's
like
only
that whole
day
way
90.
Only day 90? Well, okay.
They started January 5th or January 15th.
Yeah.
So it's like less than 90.
There's still a lot, though. Still a lot of like days in a row.
I guess I'm having like a moment of like, why has this season felt like it's been going on for like 10 years and it's only been like 75 days? It's been like 2.5 months. That's it.
Because they're just cramming it in they're cramming the whole season
so much,
it's such a turnover. The turnover rate is crazy.
There's just so much content that you can't even keep up, and your brain can't even keep up either.
Anyway, I do imagine that there is like the case of like when you've literally done it as every single day, the way the Canucks are doing it, where it's, and every day nothing's happening. I get the like, I get the human aspect of being like, well, the last 74 times were fine. Why would 75th be the accident, right? Like, I get that on a human level at the end, but at the same time, it's concerning. And if it turns out that it's, serious, yes, there's going to be a lot of tough questions, and there will absolutely deserve to be.